I was watching this other podcast, and the guys on it, there were three guys talking back and forth. For the life of me, I can't remember what it was, and it was a few days ago, and I just thought about it like it was like one of those things that I had. Anyway, if I remember who it was, I'll put the podcast in the comment. Very, very thoughtful gentlemen. They were very thoughtful. They were very kind. They seemed very considerate. One guy had a ton of books behind him, so obviously well read. I don't know about that. I'm being facetious on that one. But they were talking about, the video is about a month old, and they were talking about the opening ceremonies at the Paris Olympics. And if you remember, I did a video on that because everybody was up in arms. I shouldn't say everybody, Christians, some Christians were up in arms, freaking out because it was like mimicking, it was a parody, it was mocking the Last Supper of the Lord. Because they had people, one person in the middle with what looked like a halo and all these people on either side of them and a big meal in front of them. And it was, it did have it looked like it was similar to the Last Supper, Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper. Except it wasn't. It was actually reenacting like the Feast of Dionysus, I think is what it was. And it was wild, and like there was a blue guy, and there were a couple of cross dressers or drag queens, and there was it was funky, it was very, very Parisian, right? It was very Parisian French. They were pushing boundaries. I didn't find it all that great, but I don't understand art like that and performance like that. I wasn't like, I was just enthralled by it. Just, okay, it was something. Anyhow, these guys were talking about that moment, and they were talking about being outraged by that moment. And I was kind of surprised by it because, again, they were talking back and forth. They seemed quite knowledgeable. And so the fact that these guys were going on about how they were outraged about this depiction of the Feast of Dionysus, and they were outraged because they thought it was the Last Supper. So what they kept going on, though, about how Christians need to be outraged over things like that. That Christians need to be outraged when we see something that is attacking our faith, when we see something that's mocking our faith, when we see something that's attacking or mocking God, or one of the core tenets or core values of what we believe, that we need to be willing to be outraged, that being nice and simply, letting it slide off like water off a duck's back isn't okay. They brought up that Jesus had moments of outrage, that being angry isn't a sin, and it isn't. Being angry isn't a sin. And they said that anger is valuable, and anger is useful, and anger has a place, and anger is anger can bring about change. Now, we've had those conversations, and I would still argue that while anger brings energy with it, that real change happens when we're actually able to let the anger go and focus and approach something with a clear brain, because anger also usually doesn't help us see the entire picture. But that's what these folks were talking about. And the one thing that popped into my brain was, fair enough. I'll give that to you. I'm okay with it. I don't agree that anger brings about change. I think anger brings about a feeling. That feeling can tell us this is something that's problematic. It's when we recognize that it's problematic that brings about change. But I can't be angry and expect to do my best work. So, I'll give this to you. Christians, we should get outraged when people mock our faith. We should get outraged when people attack God, or attack our faith, or attack our church, or attack our belief system. When they mock us, when they make fun of us, when they try to destroy us, when they try to persecute us, we should be outraged. I'm not gonna have the argument again that that's not our place, right? Because we were told over and over again, you will be persecuted, you will be mocked, you will suffer. For following me, all these things and worse. You'll be martyred, right? You'll be killed. You'll be exiled. You'll be ostracized. You'll be isolated. You'll be imprisoned. You'll be beaten. You'll be tortured. Like all of these things we were told over and over and over again. It's in the contract. It's in the fine print, I think, somewhere, but we signed it. I'm not going to have that argument. I'm just going to go with, okay, fair enough. We're supposed to be outraged. But if we're going to be outraged, okay, if Christians are going to say, okay, you know what? Next time somebody mocks my God, I'm going to lose my mind. You better be real certain that that's actually what's going on. Because what's happening in our world today is that Christians are losing their minds about things that have nothing to do with us. We are losing, again, the Paris Olympics, that opening ceremony at the Paris Olympics is a perfect example of it. Christians should be outraged because they're mocking the Last Supper. Well, number one, Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper was not an accurate depiction of what that room probably looked like. And it definitely wasn't an accurate depiction of who those men were. And it definitely wasn't an accurate depiction of how they all sat at the table. It's just a painting. Lovely, historic painting, but it's still just a painting. There's nothing holy. There's nothing religious about it. It's art. And for what it's worth, it's a mural on a wall. Art. And that's not what this was about. So if we're going to get outraged, then you need to be really, 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 really careful that you're being outraged about something that actually deserves outrage. That you're being outraged. Like, what are you're going to be outraged because Parisians have a particular taste in their performances? That's what you're like. That's because at the end of the day, that's what this was. This wasn't mockery of a Christian thing. This was a performance of the Feast of Dionysus. This was a reenactment of a pagan festival, a pagan event moment. Is that what you're going to get? That's what you're going to get outraged by? If you're, again, to me, if we're not careful, if we're going to say, okay, you know what? We're going to get outraged. We're going to get angry. And we're not careful. We're going to look like fools because we'll be outraged about everything. Every time somebody does something, oh, I'm up in arms over it. Every time somebody says something, oh, I can't believe they're mocking us. And for what it's worth, that's kind of where we are. As a person who's done this on YouTube for a little while, like half my videos are talking about Christians being outraged about something ridiculous. We look petty. We look like the thinnest skinned individuals on the planet. Half of the time Christians follow a particular ideology that would say something along the lines of the facts don't care about your feelings. And our feelings get hurt all the time for things that, factually speaking, shouldn't bother us. So if we're going to be outraged, if we're going to allow for outrage, if we're going to encourage Christians to be outraged when God is mocked, then we, at the minimum that is going to be required of us, because we've got the actual outrage thing, we're good at it. But the minimum that is going to be required of us is that the people that we're going to be outraged at should actually be mocking God, or attacking us, or persecuting us, or trying to put us down. It can't just be them painting themselves blue for a strange opening ceremony of the Olympics. It can't just be them living their life. It can't just be them choosing to do whatever it is they do, and for the most part leaving us out of it, and we go, oh, they're mocking God. Can't be. And it can't be other people worshiping in their way. If we're going to do this outrage thing, we gotta pick those battles real carefully. Because if we don't, we're going to continue to show the world that we are ridiculous. Amen.